Chris Docherty, thanks very much for coming on Business Spotlight Interviews.
Thanks for inviting me.
We really look forward to hearing your story. Why don't we just start, Chris, by you telling us a little bit about what you do and how long you've been doing it?
Yeah, sure. So, my name's Chris. I have been working with a company called FQM Limited now for 12 years. Joined them in 2011 to head up some of their operations in Aberdeen. Since 2015, I took over as the MD of the business. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me in the last sort of short period of time. Um, so just over 10 years with FQM itself. FQM itself is basically a business consultancy organization. Um, we help organizations meet typically their compliance needs around quality, health and safety, environment, and more so now information security and data management. We're a small niche business, and we spun out from a larger organization, which was part of the buyout that I did with the business.
And just a little, I mean, without the detail, but how did that kind of come about? What made you decide you wanted to position yourself to take over the company?
Yeah, strange one. It was never really on my radar as such. Both my parents ran their own businesses. My brother ran his own business, so I'm surprised didn't it wasn't on my radar. But effectively, I left a large organization that I worked for 10 years due to personal reasons. And someone had suggested that my skill set was transferable into the oil and gas industry, which took me by surprise, but it was. When I started working with one of the partners at the company in Aberdeen, he started talking about the partnership not working. There were four partners coming to the end of their careers, looking for some sort of exit. And we got over a course of a number of evenings, over a glass of wine or a beer, we got talking and we came up with a plan, which was I was going to spin off a part of the business, specifically grow that part of the business for him, basically to allow me to buy shares effectively in the business and take over.
Had you had an idea in your mind at that time about what you were actually going to do to grow the business?
Yeah, so I've always, I've got quite a background in international businesses. Um, I've got predominantly come from a technical background, but I do over the years have grown into senior positions and have a good understanding. So I felt there was an opportunity to take us into some of the sort of larger corporates in the oil and gas industry. And that's what we did. We targeted two main businesses. We had already done some work with them, so that we were known to them. But effectively, what I wanted to do was cross sell into those businesses across different markets, different geographical locations, and effectively, that's what we managed to do.
So, what's been your biggest learning since you've become the owner of a business?
People. I think the one thing I have to say is people. So I'd say there's two things actually. Cash flow and people. But people, I think, comes first because cash flow, I think, if you have a good model and a good system, which we have now, um, you know, I very rarely have to think about cash flow. But people is always on my radar, always something I think about. It wasn't in the early days. It wasn't part of the business, part of what I was responsible for within the business. But I very quickly realized when I took over in 2015 what a big part of it was. And unfortunately, I get hit with a juggernaut within a few weeks of taking over the business. The impact and the crash in the oil and gas industry around that time came to fruition, and a large contract to which we had a large number of people working came to an end, and I actually had to let a number of people go within a very short period of time taking over.
Um, yeah, well, that's tough to do, especially when you've only just started out with.
Yeah.
big hopes and dreams, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay, but I can't let go of the people one yet. I need to probe a little bit deeper. What would have been one of your biggest learnings about leading people and dealing with people? I mean, what when you took over the business, what did you say to yourself like, wow, I need to learn more about this?
Yeah, I think my previous MD at that business, I think in hindsight, I look back to some of the lessons that he gave me around people. And he often said to me that he wished he'd met me 10 years before and came into the business 10 years before he was closer to retirement age. But there was a number of things that he said that I was probably quite passive on around not only your own people, but the people that you sell to. And one of the big things that he used to always say was people buy from people. You know, at the end of the day, you can have very good products, very good services, but ultimately it's the people that front that to your clients, and people buy from people. And I think that has came back to me many, many times. And I've realized that even in situations when things go wrong, if you've built up a reputation through your people, then your clients and others can trust you to resolve the situation. Um, if you don't have that, then you can have a real strong battle to retain clients in situations like that. But going back to people in terms of within the organization, I think I didn't quite realize, and in particular, the learnings I've had around bringing in graduates, bringing in young people, mature people, etc. Um, it's for me, I think it has been a challenge. And I think as the years have gone on and the way the current economy is at the moment, I think it's even tougher. Um, it took us about a year just recently to find one manager that would be a fit for the business. And I think when I realized that the time it took, we tried recruitment agents and various avenues that weren't successful. But actually, what we found the best route was actually, believe it or not, using LinkedIn and getting referrals from people that were recommending other people. And I think for me, a CV is one thing, but actually eyeballing a person and really getting to feel what that person's about and allowing them to talk and for me to listen, so far has proven successful in the last few hirings.
So that leads me onto my next question then, Chris, which is what are the qualities that you do look for in team members when you're recruiting?
So I think qualifications and certificates and things can always be got, is my belief. We can always help people get them. But the foundation of a person that has real integrity in what they want to do and what they can deliver, I think that's really far more important to us. So I think people that have a level of experience, it doesn't matter really where that experience can be. Our most recent manager we hired is from the forces. His most experience came from the army and the Royal Engineers. But actually, the individual himself is what we are buying into
Yeah.
and not what his CV necessarily says.
How do you foster a positive work environment and productive work environment for your team? Because presumably, I mean, especially if the employment situation is where it's at in Scotland at the moment, retention of employees and growth of employees must be vitally important to you.
Yeah, I mean, we are a tiny organization, so need to be clear on that. We are tiny. We don't hire a lot. We don't have a lot of employees, but it's in some cases it's even more critical for us because losing one person is a large percentage of operational activity that we do. So one of the things that I think has been a learning for me in particular, and I'm not sure. I spoke to my wife about this, that I think it could have came from around the COVID time, but it might not have. It might have just been there anyway. And that was the quality that people get from their own personal time. As a
Mm.
youngster, growing up in large international corporations, for me, the big thing was the position, the title, the chase up the ladder. And very quickly, I think, as a lot of people will know, the quality of life outside of work is also really important and probably brings about a better worker. So one of the key things that we do is we provide flexibility to our workforce. Within a very short period of time of people joining us, we will make it clear to them that, there is a level of flexibility and freedom for them to be able to down tools and go somewhere because their wife or their child or their parent need them at that particular time. We believe that if we offer that level of flexibility, we'll get more in return. And I think that's something that I probably wouldn't have bought into as a younger Chris. I think that this it comes from maturity, it comes from a bit of experience yourself.
And it's changing, right? The whole kind
Yeah,
of perspective, especially with younger people entering the workforce, so the importance of flexibility, working from home. We have to adapt the way we
absolutely.
employ and offer that flexibility. I mean, that's a great top tip right there. I think people will take a lot away from that. What
Mm.
about you personally? How do you balance your personal life with the demands of running a business? Because I guess you can't give yourself the same flexibility, or can you?
No, I can. I can. Of course, I've got to have the ability to switch on when I have to as well. So an example of that was, before we hired this new manager recently, we won a number of quite large contracts in Q4 last year, calendar Q4. And there was a bit of pain with that because we knew we needed to get someone, but we just couldn't hire. And I'd been burnt before with hiring the wrong person. So that resulted in me and a couple of others having, what I would call a pretty tough time. But it wasn't sweat and tears digging roads out in the cold winter. I was sitting behind a desk, and I'm always conscious of that. I was sitting there in a desk, investing time.
Mm.
It wasn't physical, muscle or anything like that. But yeah, out with those times, I absolutely do give myself that level of flexibility as well. And I think it's important because I realized around Christmas and New Year, 22 into 23, that I kind of had burnt my brain out a little bit with just taking on too much, working too long hours, being in front of the computer for too long. And I realized that as a result of that, yes, I did manage to keep things ticking over, but one of the downsides were that I probably wasn't giving 100% in true value to what I was trying to do.
Yes.
So yeah, one of the big things it really is to downtime. Quite often I block out my diary for long periods of time. So it's quite a common thing that people will see my diary completely blocked out on a Friday. That means I get a long morning walk with the dog, fresh air no matter the weather. Also means that quite often I'll have a proper lunch, sit down lunch with my wife. But also means I can focus on things that I quite often put off, the things that I don't want to do
Ah,
or don't float my boat as much when you run a business.
yeah. I mean, I guess it's easy when you're running a busy business to just allow yourself to be distracted with the problems and the stuff, and
Yeah,
that's what helps you procrastinate on the things you don't necessarily look forward to doing.
exactly. And to be honest, my whole career has always been a little bit of sort of the firefighting type stuff, solving problems, helping, things like that. So the mundane cash flow, accounts conversations, invoicing conversations, those are the ones that you have to do, but it's one of those easy ones that you can bat away when there's something a little bit more exciting to do.
Exactly, definitely. So, what are your aspirations for your company in the next 5 years, Chris?
Yeah, I think we're growing at around about 25 to 30% year on year. One of the key things that came about when I took over the business was cash flow is king. and our profit was something that I wanted to put a lot of focus on. So the model that we produced going from then until now was that we've more got a service level agreement model now, where clients pay a monthly fee for our services, including our product, whereas before it was much more contract based. So it had a much greater cycle that can impact a business, and doesn't allow you to plan as well. Now our business is much more linear. We see a growth month on month. And I think over the course, we've no aspirations to be a very big company. That's not something that I wish to do. I think we have a very niche offering. I think one of the key things that any client will say about us is our customer service, what we provide in terms of our people, which is why going back to the conversation right at the beginning, it's so important for us. The aspirations I have, I would love to see my children come into the business, and we're in conversations about that at the moment. They're not ready to come in yet. I believe it's a good model, the business that we have. I would like to start to back away from the daily of the business in 5 years' time. I would like to invest time in charity work. I feel strongly about that, and I've got some personal connections for that reason as well. So I would love for we'll continue to grow the business, continue to invest in people, but I'm hoping that two of those people will be my daughters as well.
That'll be lovely, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Children in the business. I don't know that my children would want to work for me, but I know it works really well for a lot of families.
Yeah.
So what would you say to anyone who is thinking of going into business for themselves?
So the first thing I would probably say is get some life lessons first. That's probably the first thing I would say. For me, the things that I have tapped into more as a business runner has been, the things I've tapped into more has been my life experiences. So I traveled a lot around the world with work, and I think those different cultures and experiences that I got around the world has given me a lot of what I've tapped into to help me run the business. I think if any younger person is looking at start a business, I think be very conscious and very careful of what it does take. It does take a significant investment of time and energy, and it is really important that you recognize that. But anyone that is thinking of going into business and has experience that they can draw upon, I think go for it. I really do. I think if you're a grafter, like a lot of Scottish people are, I think, yeah, why not?
Brilliant, great advice. And I think that'll be a great note to kind of finish on then, because it's been an absolute delight to hear your story. Some really good learnings in there around employing the right people and giving them the right environment to grow and do their best, achieve what they want to achieve. So that's amazing. So Chris, look, thank you so much for taking the time today and share your experiences with us on Business Spotlight interviews.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.